From UFOs to ghost and psychic powers, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. You've heard of the Salem witch trials. In a bout of paranoia lasting from 1692 to 1693, over 140 people were accused of witchcraft. What caused these neighbors to turn on one another? Historians still debate the cause of this panic, pointing to anything from hysteria to ergot poisoning. But there's another skeleton in New England's closet, one just as tragic and mysterious: the vampire panic. Here are the facts. The New England vampire panic took place between 1799 and 1892. Families in Vermont, Connecticut, and Rhode Island dug up and desecrated the corpses of family members to stop them from returning. The most famous example is that of Mercy Brown, who died of consumption in 1891 after her mother and sister fell to the same disease. Fearing that Mercy had returned from the grave to prey on her brother Edwin, who also showed signs of infection, Mercy's father Charles disinterred her corpse. According to witnesses, this corpse looked fresh. It also seemed as though Mercy had moved in her coffin. When the men removed her heart, they found it contained fresh blood. Charles burned Mercy's heart and fed the ashes to his son Edwin to counteract the vampire's influence. Did it work? Edwin died 2 months later, but the Browns' curse ended there. This was not an isolated case. From the Ray family of Connecticut to Captain Burton in Vermont, families across New England conducted similar rituals. What made them think their relatives were vampires? It's hard to imagine this happening today, but back then New England was a very different place. Poor farmers dotted the countryside and often had no one else to rely on in an emergency. One of the worst diseases of the time was consumption, which we know as tuberculosis today. With the cramped, unsanitary living conditions common to the area, this disease could sweep through generations in a few months. The symptoms of consumption included weakness, pale skin, and loss of appetite, all of which fit the classic description of a vampire victim. As this sickness spread from one family member to the next, relatives believed they were falling prey to vampires. Vampire myths also came before forensic science. Since the skin recedes upon death, it often looks like a corpse's fingernail and hair continue to grow. A buildup of gas in a corpse can also give it a bloated appearance, as though it has recently fed. Most importantly, the cause of tuberculosis, bacteria, wasn't discovered until the 1880s, so people couldn't explain the origins of the infection. To the Browns, the Rays, and other families, these symptoms matched what they had always heard about vampires. But here's where it gets crazy. Why did these families only desecrate some corpses? Mercy's mother and sister died before her, but they stayed buried. Henry Nelson's father died, but only his brothers were disinterred. This pattern repeats itself in cases throughout New England. Something made these communities believe one grave held a vampire and another held a common corpse. But what was it? The historical records don't contain any information about their decisions. We're left with the research of historians who assure us that tuberculosis caused the panic. But the question remains, if they all had the same disease, then why were some corpses spared? Why is so much evidence of this panic missing? Could it be a bacterial infection mixed with superstition and tragedy? Or could it be something else? Something more sinister, buried in time and purposefully forgotten. Something they don't want you to know.